We should be live, but I am not seeing us live yet. So I'm just going to take one moment and make
Okay.
sure that we're live
All right.
as I look on my other computer screens. Okay. All right. I think everything is working now. All right. I am John Stoner with the Diane Initiative. Some of you folks might know me. I'm helping run the Career Village again this year. I'm really excited today to be joined by Nikkia Henderson, who's going to explain and break down some myths about the federal hiring process, which I'm super excited about. I was a Fed for about 3 years, and most of my work is supporting some sort of federal agency in my DoD contracting role. So, welcome, Nikkia. We're super excited to have you on today.
Thanks, John, and everyone. I appreciate you guys taking the time to, I guess, let's fellowship on a Saturday afternoon when the weather is nice and we could, be outside exploring, but we're in front of our computer. So thank you. I'm definitely honored to be here with you guys today.
Yeah, so did you want to start off by just giving us maybe a little bit of background of all of the cool and exciting things that you are also involved in and sort of like how maybe we came to be inviting you on today to talk about federal jobs?
Absolutely. I was hoping we can start with some very just icebreakers and some overviews of who I am, what I do, how I came to have the knowledge base and some of the subject matter expertise I carry to speak about this subject today. A little bit about me. I originally from California. I live in Maryland now. So I like to say I'm a Cali Valley girl, but I've been in the DMV area, oh gosh, long enough for them to say that the DMV is my home. And I'm like, no, there's Cali blood in me, and there will always be Cali blood in me. Monterey is my favorite place in the world. The aquarium I try to go to at least once a year, and I just love the Monterey Bay Aquarium. So that's my dream place to just go and have maybe like a condo somewhere around there. I have been in the federal government for 13 years. Yeah, I've been in the federal government for 13 years. I am currently at CISA right now. I am working on doing some initiatives and some senior advising there within the agency. However, I've only been there for 6 months. And I preface all this by saying that I am not in my official government capacity on a Saturday at 6 o'clock p.m. So I'm not trying to get my fingers then my wrist slapped. I am I am here as a volunteer. I am here as a public servant who is just called to help, who loves to help. And I love to share whatever knowledge that I have with anyone who asks, hey, what do you know about this? In my outside of my 9 to 5 role, I am the president of the WeSys Mid Atlantic affiliate. That's here in the DMV area. We were one of the first affiliates to be stood up, and I actually just got voted into this role about 6 months ago, which is when I actually transitioned agencies as well. And so it's been a lot of transition the past 6 months for me, taking on the presidency of this affiliate as well as learning a new agency in my new role. But how did I get my new role? I had to apply. I had to have a resume. I had to have a job. And since I decided to stay into the federal government, I felt this is appropriately time to sort of kind of share my experience and what I know about the federal hiring process.
Yeah, that's awesome. I really appreciate all that information. I am also not here in any official capacity with any employer. I also help out with some other nonprofits. So I help out with the Diane Initiative. We're back in Vegas August 7th. So hopefully you'll be
Yay.
able to see us. We're kicking off Hacker Summer Camp and being on the Monday this year. I think I'm going to be there like the whole time for everything. Um, but also with some of the veteran programs that I work with, a lot of veterans are interested in federal jobs too. So this sort of like crossed all the T's for me of things that I find people coming to ask me about as well. And I think we get a lot of people when I'm talking to them or mentoring them, or there's some sort of a boot camp, and I get folks reaching out that sometimes don't consider federal jobs. And I'm always the first person, especially if you're breaking into the field or a mid-career changer. I always advocate. I was like, look, just because you get a federal job doesn't mean it has to be the job you stay in forever either.
Exactly.
I am proof of that. I went into the federal government service and then I ended up not staying. But it was a super valuable experience as well. And I really valued everything I learned while I was a GS employee. Um, so yeah, with that said, how would you like to sort of like kick things off? Did you want to start with a slideshow, or do we want like
So I do have a slideshow. We'll get into that. I'm a firm believer of not to have death by PowerPoint. So I have it as a tool. I have as an aid. I will do a screen share in a little bit. But I just wanted to sort of kind of start high level and have a dialogue and a conversation. You know, John, when you and I first talked, and we just seemed to like connect, like our brains just like sort of comes like, hey, I know you, and that's your experience, and that's my experience, and I want to make sure that this is like a candid conversation of information sharing, but I consider myself a cyber fuzzy and not a cyber techie, meaning I really enjoy focusing and investing in the human side of cyber. Because we are humans and we are people, and that in those interpersonal skills that really help us develop and excel and be the best that we can be in any discipline that we choose to go in. I'm going to probably say this, I don't know how many times. If we had a counter, when I go back and look at this video, I'm going to count. But um, finding a federal job is a job in itself. Period, exclamation, underline, highlight, bold. um, in order to be successful in that, I will say you probably want to put on your patience cap with the big P and just understand that it is a process. However, you have to trust the process. And if you trust the process and if you have that patience, then it could definitely be fruitful for those job seekers that are trying to get into a position within the federal government. There are several different, tracks and different ways to go into the government. I know today is just one of conversations that we're going to have. I hope we'll have many more to really like unravel the federal hiring process and take some of the layers and go into each one more in depth. But today I'll try to keep it as high level as possible. But another thing that I want to highlight and start by saying is that there are a lot of different documents, there are a lot of different personal information that you need before you can even get ready to start to um, do your USA jobs profile, write your federal resume, right? And so those are some of the things that I may get into as I go through my slide presentation. But I just want to give sort of kind of some insights into my experience that I had and continue to have or hear other folks having when they are navigating USA jobs, because that's what it is. It's a navigation of the system. And once you understand the system, you can understand how to best represent yourself in it. So first, some of my experience just over the past 13 years, I probably have applied to, I don't know if I had to give it a number, maybe, I don't know, 862 jobs.
that's very
Just
precise?
um I think somewhere up in there. And what I started out doing even before I entered the federal government was just looking at the jobs that were on USA Jobs. And we'll get into what USA Jobs is if you don't have any idea, if you've never heard that, or if you have heard that and you're like, no, I want to stay completely away from that. Hopefully after the end of this will be one of those myth busting where we're like, okay, maybe I'll go back in there and give it a try. But it's cumbersome, and there are a lot of different there are several inputs that you're going to need. There is several pieces of documentation that you're going to need. And I learned a lot about myself. You'd have to do an equip if well, that's once you get an actually hired. But even going through, you need to know like your last addresses for the past 7 years. You need to know your relatives. You need to have emergency contacts. If you are a veteran, you need to have your veteran documentation and your information. You need to have the paperwork. If you're a recent college grad or if you're in college, you need to have transcripts. I mean, if you graduated 10, 12 years ago, you're like, transcripts, how do I go get my transcripts? Where are my transcripts? Do I even have my transcripts? Because I'm gonna tell you now, just trying to upload a picture of your degree that may be hanging on the wall isn't gonna cut it, right? You have to um, make sure that you tailor your resume and customize your resume in a way that's going to highlight and focus on the skill set that you have to match yourself to the federal job that you're trying to apply for. And then sometimes it's not easy to articulate that. Some of us don't know how to necessarily say, here are my transferable skills to the job that I'm trying to actually obtain. And so part of the federal hiring process is really understanding the vacancy. Um, Vacancy, aka, means like the job announcement. That's what they're called in USA Jobs, the job vacancy. And so I'm going to sort of kind of walk you all through, how do I understand the vacancy? What are the details of the vacancy that I should probably know, or what are the things I need to look out for? I can't tell you how many jobs I've applied to, and like off the break, I've spent hours. I've applied. I've back in the day, and some agencies still, you have to write what are known as KSAs, which are knowledge, skills,
Oh,
and
I hate that.
assessments. Do you remember those?
I've
And
I've applied for about 112 federal jobs, so I'm quite familiar with this.
yeah, so writing KSAs was a huge deterrent for applicants looking to get into the federal government, because they're 2,000 words, half a page, a whole page. They're basically essays that you have to write, that one demonstrates your writing abilities, two demonstrates your knowledge and skills and assessments for the job in which you're trying to hire. So it's like, how do you demonstrate this project equates to me being this type of program analyst? And so it was like a research paper. You're writing
Yeah.
a research paper in order to just submit your application. And
Yep.
again, finding a job within the federal government is a job within itself.
But I will say, so I think we're going to cover a lot of like some of the obstacles and hurdles and things people don't understand. One of the reasons I tell people to hire federal jobs for IT and cybersecurity is there's a lot of vacancies though. Like there's a lot of
Exactly.
vacancies. So I know we're going to talk about the process. You're going to give out some information, and it is tedious, and you do need your patience hat that you talked about. But there's a lot of open jobs right now. So that's why I'm
Several open
also
jobs.
excited about getting people comfortable with being able to apply.
And I'm glad you brought that point. That's a perfect segue, because we all know that there is a shortage within the cybersecurity, talent gap and pipeline, right? We know that there are thousands of jobs and not enough applicants for those jobs, whether it's private sector or the federal government. I look at the federal government and employment within the federal government, and this is honestly what I have been telling, my younger siblings, my nieces and my nephews, but also all of those parents that have children, and they're like looking for or dreading, I don't want my child to go to college and have college debt. I don't want my child to be burdened with, or I as the parent, I don't want to be burdened with, how do I pay for my kid to go to college. I think the federal government is an optional solution to getting gainfully employed right out of high school, right? Um, because again, like John mentioned, there are several jobs within cybersecurity. There is this robust cyber workforce that are, in 9, 10, 11th and 12th grade. They're looking for internships, they're looking for their apprenticeships, or they've completed some of those. And some of them are thinking, hey, school, college, higher education, I don't know if I want to go to college. I don't, or I'm just schooled out, I want to start working. And they're having private sector knocking on their door. Hey, we can, start you out making more money than you ever thought possible with your first job. And so the federal government to me is sort of kind of a bridge to one, entering the workforce right after high school if it's something you desire, because they have what's called step ladders, and these type of positions are quote unquote entry level positions. Starting at, a GS 9, 11, and 12. So within your first 3 years, you could potentially go from a GS 9 to a GS 12 based on your performance and how well you do. Go ahead, John. Were you going to say anything to
Yeah,
that?
I was just going to say, I think there are probably people who don't understand what the GS pay scale is. And
Yes. And
so that's what we're talking about is the GS, the structured sort of numerical value. There's a chart of how the federal government does jobs. It's the general scale. Is that what GS stands for? General scale, I think.
yeah,
And so I'm sure you're going to get to that at some point. But when we talk about a GS7 or GS9 or GS11, that's sort of like,
general schedule.
yeah,
Yeah,
the general schedule, the sort of the level, the seniority of that position. And a lot of
exactly.
jobs are between GS9, 11, and 12. And then like towards 13 and 14, and then especially 15, that's some level of leadership generally. A lot of the
Yes.
13s are still technical hands-on leadership, and a lot of your 14s and 15s are deputy directors, director type roles.
Exactly. Perfect breakdown of that. And yeah, we'll get into some of that. We can, and I don't know. I mean, I just want you guys to be patient with us. This is definitely my first time on this platform. John, I see you over there typing, so I'm assuming you're in the chat, right?
Yeah,
Or is the
I'm
chat
putting some comments
open?
into the chat once in a while just to
Perfect.
make sure we've
Okay.
covered something that you've said. Yeah.
Okay, great. And then we can, put some of these links in there to like the GS scale so they can see what that chart is. It changes every year. They update, what the scale looks like. And that will be a whole nother session, working through the GS
Yep. There's a
schedule
lot
and
to
the wage
cover.
grade.
There's a lot to cover. If we don't get to anything today, we could have another session at some point. Because the other thing is like if you're Googling along now and looking up the GS pay scale, you need to look up the pay scale for your locality, right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
for those of us in the DC, Maryland, Virginia region, make sure if you are Googling what does a GS9 potentially make and are looking at the scale, make sure it's the current 2023 schedule for pay
Yep.
and make sure it's aligned to the locality because all the federal positions, what you actually get paid is based on locality of where that job is physically located in the world or in the US.
Yes. And so what John mentioned, the word locality, that's your duty station where you're reporting. And we're post pandemic now, right? So you have this remote workforce. So your locality could be, I'm in the DMV area, my duty station, I'm considered a remote employee, so my duty station is home. But there are some individuals who may, live in the DMV, live in outside of the DMV area, but their locality is based off their address, meaning they may live in North Carolina but they report to their duty station, which is located in DC. So although they live in North Carolina, they may be getting paid based off either North Carolina or where their home office is. And again, that's a whole nother conversation. I don't want to give you guys a whole bunch of information and not bust any myths but create more. That's not my job. So without further delay, let me do this. Let me go into the presentation and into the PowerPoint, and I'm just going to sort of kind of walk through. This is a presentation that I've tweaked for today's call. I've given this actually several times to our affiliate, to like some college students, to some high school students, and it's just sort of kind of an overview of the navigation part of USA Jobs. And before I go into it, what is USA Jobs? And I keep hearing you, Nikkia, say USA Jobs, USA Jobs, USA Jobs. USA Jobs is pretty much kind of like the Indeed or Monster platform for federal jobs. So it is a landing page that all of the job vacancies and announcements are posted. There are all of the open positions that are posted, and it's pretty much the process that you have to start. It's the go on the monopoly board, if you will, to begin your federal job search. within the platform, you have to create a profile. The profile isn't optional, it's mandatory. You have to upload a resume. It's not, optional, it's mandatory. And then once we get into there, you'll see like you can upload a federal resume, which is very generic and, computerized. They'll take your Word document or they'll take your PDF and compute it into this uniform template that USA Jobs has and spit it out for you. Um, or you can upload, some jobs will allow you to just upload your own resume that you have. And hopefully we'll be able to touch on that today. If not, we'll come back. But the federal resume itself can be daunting because the job vacancies, as we get through them, you're going to need to have your supervisor, the number of hours that you've worked. Was it a full-time position? Was it a part-time position? What location was it at? What series was it at? And you're like, series? What series? That's the job category that you hold. And I have been guilty of this. I have eliminated myself from even graduating to the next level of, hey, I've made the candidate list to be passed on to HR because I didn't put the number of hours that I worked at a job on my federal resume. And so as you read the vacancies, you have to read the details because in the details is where you have all the qualifying information. And it's not a, hey, you check 7 out of 10 boxes, you check 6 out of 10 boxes. Like you have to check all 10 boxes so that you can submit your resume and make the certification list. So, and with that, I'm going to go ahead and present. Just let me know if you cannot see my screen, but you should be able to. And then if there are any questions, again, if there are questions or if you're adding comments, John, for this to be like, recorded and posted, just stop me. I want this to be interactive because I can get really excited and talk about this for, I don't know, for hours, for days.
Yeah, if we get any questions, I can let you know. I'm just trying to add some things in there.
Okay, perfect. So let me see. All right. Well, you guys already know who I am. You guys already know what this is. I just put that on there so that I know. Navigating USA Jobs. That's what we're going to get into. Building your federal resume. What does that look like? How do you do that? Where do you start? And if you have one, it may be like a gut check. Like, is my resume, and do I need to dust it off? Do I need to add to it? And hopefully we can round this out with like an actual live demo so I can show you what the vacancies in USA Job looks like and what you actually want to pay attention to. I'm a paper person. I always print out the vacancies because I use the keywords that are in the vacancies and see how many of the keywords align to my resume. And I don't know, just I guess old study habits. If you have a yellow highlighter and a blue highlighter and ends up green, then you sort of kind of can see that overlapping. That's kind of like a little trick that I have. And then we'll just have some closing remarks, but let's get into it. Like I said,
let me add that. There we go.
Oh, go ahead.
Okay, you should be good. Everybody should be able to see your slides now.
Okay, perfect. So navigating USA Jobs, like I said, it takes patience. You are going to need a lot of patience to do so. But and this is just the heavy lifting. This is the initial, I am creating my USA Jobs profile. This is my first time in it, or I am updating my profile, or I'm getting ready to go out there and actively seeking a new job. You just have to put on that big P, patience cap. And then again, trust the process because the process is in place to be as streamlined and as effective as it is. But at the end of the day, the process works. And if you're in cybersecurity and if you're looking for a job and you start going down the path of looking for a federal job, that process through USA Jobs, there are people who get hired. There are lots of people who get hired. I'm one of them. There are agencies out there that are aggressively looking for you. And so that conduit for them to find you and you to find them is via USA Jobs. So 6 steps to a federal job. 1, familiarize yourself with the federal job process. That's what we're doing today. So you guys are already doing step 1. 2, network within your network. This is extremely important because you don't know who you don't know. And if you network within the individuals that you know within your network, ask the questions. Hey, do you know anyone that's looking for a detail? Do you know anyone that's looking for an entry level job? Or is your agency hiring? If you know someone in the government, is your agency hiring? Because sometimes just that introduction to say, hey, this is, so and so Kevin. Kevin has applied for the job. Here's his resume. And Kevin can get an understanding of what the actual job is. You're in the position, and this is Kevin. This is what the 9 to 5 look like. This is what the day to day looks like. And I have no idea why I called out Kevin, but that's the first name that popped in my head. So we're going with Kevin. Kevin's going to be my guy today. Set up your USA Jobs account, and we can sort of kind of go through what that looks like and how to do that. Next, you're going to need to build your federal resume. And as you're getting ready to build your federal resume, you want to make sure you get that key information that I sort of kind of hit on. You want to, how long were you at the job, month and year? How many hours did you work a week? Was it a full-time job? Where was it? What was your supervisor's name? What was your supervisor's phone number? What was their email address? Who are your references that you're going to put down and list? And here's something that I say. If you're going to put down a reference on your resume that a future or potential employer is going to be calling to say, hey, should we hire this person, or what was it like working for that person? Make sure that you put someone who you had a great working relationship with and that you guys did great works and great projects together with. You don't want to put down somebody who may not give the most favorable recommendation for you. I've experienced that. I've had people who've put, hey, I didn't like them. I didn't like them for whatever reason. And, I just don't do that. Just don't do that. Next, search for jobs. You're going to search for the jobs, and I'm going to give you the key to what type of job series or the search criteria to identify and to locate those cybersecurity jobs in the federal government that you want to hire. And I'll also show you, as of June 3rd, 2023, exactly how many cybersecurity jobs are out there that are just listed, right? That are listed that we know about, that's on USA Jobs that you can apply for. And then 6, press the button. I always say press the button, which means that you're just applying. You are applying to the jobs. And set up a dedicated time for yourself to apply. Saturday mornings, spend an hour, or Sunday evenings, give yourself an hour to go into USA Jobs. You can set up job searches, which will give you a daily, weekly, monthly results of the jobs criteria that you selected. They'll tell you these are the jobs. You can look at those vacancies, but make sure you set up dedicated time for you to apply to jobs. And you can't apply to just one, right? Make a goal for yourself of how many jobs you want to apply on a either daily or weekly basis. If it's 5 jobs a week and you're going to do it Saturday evening between 6 and 8, then it's 5 jobs a week. But just make sure, as you're thinking about getting ready to apply for a federal job, or if you're in a federal job getting ready to apply to another one, what's your goal? What's your objective? How soon are you trying to make a move? How soon are you trying to get into it? But make sure whatever you establish for yourself, you commit to. For me, I think I went through, when I first started looking for my first job in the federal government, I had it Saturday mornings. I'd wake up, I would walk around the neighborhood, I'd get a cup of tea, I'd sit in front of the desk, and I would apply to 10 jobs. And I know 10 jobs seems like, oh my gosh, you're applying to 10 jobs every week. That's 40 hours. That's 40 jobs a month, times 12, you do the math. But once you have your profile set up, once you have your resume set up, and once you know the job series that you're looking for, applying to jobs isn't that hard. It's the initial lifting and the initial upfront administrative tasks that you have to do. So familiarizing yourself with the federal hiring process. Do your research. And this isn't just in federal jobs. This is anywhere. Who's hiring? What agencies are hiring? Why are they hiring? Are they hiring because they're a new agency that's just been established and they have budget to do so? Are they hiring because there's a shift and they've seen a lot of retirees sort of kind of going out, and so there are all these new open positions that are coming open. Is it a new division within the agency that's being stood up? These are all very important questions just to put in the back of your mind. And you say, well, Nikkia, why are these important? Why do I care why they're hiring? Why do I care who they're hiring? I want them to hire me. Yes, you want them to hire you. But your job is going to be where you spend majority of your day and where you invest majority of your time Monday through Friday. And you want to make sure you land in a job that, one, you enjoy, two, you're proud of, and three, you get the highest return on your investment, which is your time. Your time and your effort that you spend on your job should be fruitful enough to where you go to work or you go to sleep at night proud of the work that you're doing, comfortable and proud with the team that you're working with, and you feel accomplished. Now, you may, have your good days and your bad days, but this is where you spend the bulk of your life. So you want to know, who are they hiring? Are they hiring like-minded people like me? Are they looking for, are they going through the pathway of looking for recent college grads? Are they looking for senior officials? Like, these are pretty, just good trends to follow and to just be mindful. If you notice at the bottom, I have a tip: read executive orders, OMB memos, news articles, Google alerts. Well, why would any of that play into my federal job search? The reason why is because with executive orders, especially the cybersecurity 14028, there are components of that talks about upskilling the cybersecurity workforce. There are jobs that there are statutes in there that talks about actually bridging the cybersecurity gap and investing in the cybersecurity workforce, either by way of education, but also training and hiring, and filling those gaps that we know is going to be there and that is there, not today, tomorrow, next week. OMB memos, what's coming out of OMB, what's hot on their tasker. If we start thinking about diversity, we start thinking about AI, we start thinking about machine learning, we start thinking about just threats and vulnerabilities and all these type of memos that are coming out. This is what our administration is doing, and our federal government sort of kind of has to have the workforce to be able to help fulfill those requirements that are coming out. Just try to take a big picture view of your job and job search, instead of it just being like, hey, I need a job that's going to pay the bills, because you can get that job that's going to pay the bills, but are you going to be happy?
Yeah,
And
I
some of
think
this is go
you
ahead.
covered a couple other points too, like understanding what the agency's mission is and what they do and sort of what the culture is. And you might know some people, right? The culture at NSA is different than a Department of Justice, and it's different than Department of Energy and Department of Education, right? So even some of that background, like they all
Yep.
might need IT and cybersecurity people, but like what that agency is doing and what the mission is and what their culture is will be very different.
Exactly, extremely different. And what they're and you are aligning yourself. I always say this, and I'm just going to say it. I don't feel like I would get in trouble. You are the asset, right? They have the shortage, they need you, you are the asset. And if you're the asset, there comes an element of being able to leverage yourself to get into the role and get into the position that you want to be in. You sort of kind of like have the pen um, on the canvas to identify, or to, I don't want to say control the narrative of the type of job you get, but if you don't believe in an agency's mission, why would you be applying for jobs there if you don't even agree with what they do, or that's not what you see yourself doing? Why would you even want to go? It's not, I mean, an agency, a company, it really doesn't matter. But as you as an individual are in your job search, make sure you're trying to do that internal check. What's valuable to me? Where do I see myself? What do I want to do? What type of difference, if any, because some of us, may not, do I want to make? And then what agencies are doing that work? What agencies are in that space? And then, oh, well, then what type of jobs do those agencies have? And John, you mentioned culture. um culture plays a big role in your work-life balance, your job satisfaction, just your productivity. What is the culture like in that job? And right now, government employees know we're in the middle of the fevs has been released, and you're like, well, what's the fevs, Nikki? Why are you going down this tangent? But it's the Federal Employee Viewpoint Survey. And every year, there's a survey that goes out to the federal workforce to capture a lot of things. How do you like your agency? How do you like your leadership? How are you satisfied? What can you do better? What keeps you there? All these type of things. And why are these things important is because these results are posted. I believe it's a Partnership for Public Service will post the rankings of each federal agencies and their subcomponents and divisions within those agencies to say, is it a top agency, federal agency to work for, or is this division within this agency one of the top agencies, top 5, top 10, top 20? And John, I don't know if you can find that, but just what is it called? Best places to work, I believe, the best places to work in the federal government, and it will rank the agencies that you could potentially be going to. Why is that important, you say? It's no different than as consumers, we read the reviews before we make a purchase, right? We do our research and our due diligence before, we click the Amazon cart, or, before we go buy a car, we read the reviews. Before we put our kids in school, we try to find out what the school ratings are. Why would that be any different than in our job search? It plays a big role, and it really helps us in making sure that we as a job applicants, like I said, we're the assets. And it's
Yeah.
also a good interview. It's a good interview technique. You can say, well, I noticed if they say, why do you want to come work for us, or why are you the best candidate, why should we choose you? Well, I was reading in the 2022 FEF survey, you guys are the top third agency to work for, and I want to be a part of that. I believe in your mission. And from an HR perspective, they're like, they did some research on us, like they okay. So there's all these little nuances and tips and tricks that you can use when you are applying for jobs and interviewing for jobs. So
Yeah, that's some great info. And apparently NASA is the place to work for
it
21 and
is.
22. So that's pretty exciting. And when you talked about culture as well, like if you've never considered working for the federal government before, and this is really like maybe you're thinking about it now, having watched the webinar, right? Not everybody might want to go work for the Department of the Navy or the Department of the Army. I've talked to some people who wanted to join the military but couldn't, and felt really compelled by the mission of the DoD, and that's what drove them to become a federal civilian, because they were unable to join it as a uniform member, right? And we know there's other people who are probably like, that's not the culture for me. Like maybe you could not be in favor of wars, right? We don't have to go down that route, but like the Department of Education does a lot of really fantastic things. If you feel like education is somewhere that you're also passionate about, in addition to like IT and cybersecurity. So those are like some broad things to think about as you begin this process of looking for federal jobs that not only fit the day-to-day of what you want to do as a cybersecurity professional, but fit like the mission that you also strongly believe in, because you'll get more job satisfaction in the long run.
Agreed. And I will just add a tip to that. Department of Education, John, you mentioned, you think about cybersecurity and where we're going. And if you're looking at trends, and we talk about the cyber workforce, the future cyber workforce, it's in K-12. And you have Department of Ed, it's Department of Education. K-12 cybersecurity education is going to be and is starting to grow the momentum. How do we start teaching cybersecurity hygiene and posture? How do we start upskilling and preparing our future generations that are in K through 12, from kindergarten through 12th grade? How do we teach them, cyber hygiene, your passwords, multi-factor authentication, not giving out your password, privacy, protecting your date of birth. And, it's like back in the day, you can't, sorry, I can go down that tangent. I'm not going to go. I'm pulling myself back up. But you said Department of Education and cybersecurity. I just want you guys to know, if you are a teacher, a teacher, you're passionate about teaching, and you want to work for an agency that is, centered around education in a cybersecurity role, you may want to look at jobs at Department of Education. Again, step 2, network within your network. Who do you know? Leverage your relationships. Get you a mentor. Attend industry events. Volunteer. OPM, Office of Personnel Management, they do several webinars on navigating the USA job, the federal resume writing process, the federal interviewing process. They're free. You can attend them. You can sign up for them. They will go through and even more into the weeds of a type of presentation I'm giving today that will walk you from A to Z, A1, A2, A3, B, B1, B2, B3 on the whole process. OPM, Office of Personnel Management, is, kind of like the HR agency for the federal government. And so when you're trying to understand, what's the big picture, but they also, have vacancies that are out there. They do need cybersecurity talent. They do have software and hardware, and they do put jobs out as well. So cyber touches everything. And I tell everyone that if you are interested, or if you want to find those transferable skills, I guarantee you, if you tie it back to the NIST framework, what you're currently doing can be directly crosswalked over, maybe not directly, but can be crosswalked over to a cybersecurity career that you're looking for. Meet and greets, the internet, anything that's out there that you can go to, attend, or listen in. Like today is one of those type of situations where you are attending, an internet event. This is a webinar. You're coming here. You're obviously interested. It's a Saturday. You don't have to be sitting in front of a computer, but this was something that piqued your interest and you want to know. So these are just, as you develop, as you grow, or if you're actually within your federal career, if you're in cybersecurity, if you're looking to get into cybersecurity, if you are looking to pivot, let's say you're in it and you are on purple team, or you are on blue team and you don't like it and you want to go into something more policy related, something more governance related, like these are all tidbits that you can take with you. And I just want to make sure that you guys understand that. But one thing I really want to point to is get a mentor. A mentor is really important. And a mentor is sort of kind of like your silent partner and your champion in the background that can really help you. Some of the best advice that I got was from 2 mentors that I had. And one of that was some advice I left with you today. Set up a time and come up with a goal for the number of jobs you want to apply to. Didn't make sense to me when he said it. But once I put it into action and into practice and became very intentional about my job search, I was so appreciative that he said it. Mentors really, they've been there, right? They've been there. They've shared some of those experiences. They can look at your resume for you and tell you, you may want to tweak this. Or did you think about that project you work on? Why don't you add that? Or this looks wonderful. Go ahead and submit. Or they can go, you can send them the job. I'm looking at applying to this. What do you think? And they can be like, based off, what I know about you, I don't know if that's the right job for you. So just make sure you get yourself a mentor as well. And that's a whole nother conversation, John, you and I can have. What is a mentor and what is mentorship? So there's so many different ways we can go with this. But let me not go down too many tangents. All right. So step 3, set up a USA Jobs account. And these are some of the steps. These are just screenshots taken right out of the platform. You create your profile, you search for jobs, you review the job announcements, you prepare your application, and you submit your application to the agency. One thing in here I just wanted to point out on here is that you can make your resume searchable, meaning once you upload and or build your federal resume, recruiters and HR professionals can search, just like, headhunters find you and, reach out to you. If you make your resume searchable, you are increasing your odds also of being seen. Mine personally isn't searchable, but I'm also not looking for a job either. So it really just depends on what your personal preference. But these are like the 5 steps once you get into USA Jobs, the platform, to set up your account. Building your federal resume, and we can go into a little bit more detail about that, but I want to make sure I show you what USA jobs look like. But these are the things that I was saying in the beginning you're going to need to know as you build your federal resume, or any resume, but today we're talking about federal resumes, specifically your cybersecurity resume, your job history. You may have had several jobs. Make sure you're identifying the jobs that best match to the position you're looking to apply to. No sense in putting the fact that you were flipping burgers, which I did my first job, out of school, on your resume if the job that you're trying to obtain is, at a higher level, a GS, 12 or 13 level. And then some folks always ask, well, how far should I go back, or how many years should I be listing on my resume? And Mythbuster right here, I'm going to tell you off the break, a federal resume 9 times out of 10 is going to be multiple pages, three to five maybe. And that's kind of like taboo in the commercial sector. They're like, hey, you may want to have like a 1 or 2 page resume, and that's sort of kind of stretching it. The ideal in this society that we live in is, you want to have at least, a 1 page resume from HR. And I've talked to lots of HR professionals. They look at your resume for about 3 to 5 seconds, 10 seconds. In the federal hiring process, 9 times out of 10, you have to, and I guess in other outside the federal government as well, but you have to, what I like to say, beat the system. Like, your resume has to be the AI system that is scanning for the keywords that's matching you and ranking you, and categorizing you as the best fit candidate, the highest qualified candidate, or um, eligible candidate, or
Yeah.
ineligible, right? Or ineligible. So you can fall into any of those buckets. But that's based on what you put in your resume.
Yeah, so just like you'll hear this on talks and webinars about the civilian system and the applicant tracking system and scoring of resumes, the same thing is true with USA Jobs. The one thing that I was a hiring manager when I was a federal civilian as well, and what I don't want to see is a 17-page resume. There are some people who are feds or were feds or veterans who still think a federal resume means it is a dossier of your entire work experience. And if I get that as a hiring manager, that's a no for me, Kevin.
Yeah.
Like, that is, I 3 to 5 pages is the correct length of a resume for a federal resume.
Yeah. Yeah. And those 3 to 5 pages, again, like, you're adding all this other additional information that you don't necessarily see on a commercial resume. And it could be like a line item, because you're trying to put this in a format that looks appealing to the eye as well. How do you sell yourself on paper? And how well do you do that? Because once they get past the applicant tracking system, and you make what we consider the cert list, if you make the cert, and the cert is basically mean like you've been found eligible for this position, you will be referred to the hiring manager. The hiring manager will get a cert list, which are all the qualified candidates that are eligible for that job that have applied. And on that list, your name could potentially fall. If you make the cert list, then that's when you're getting that human to human person that's looking at your resume. They may get, 20, 30, 40 resumes for a position. They may get 5 or 10. It really just all depends. And I'm going to show you like what to look out for in the vacancies and what the vacancies say, because some of the vacancies can say, once we receive the first 100 applicants, the job can close. And there are jobs that can close within hours. Like, the vacancy can go out. Like I talked about that search report that you can put. And if you set it up to a daily alert, you see a job that comes up. Oh, I saw a job that just came out. I just got an alert. There's a new job posted. Let me go apply. And if there are several other people that do that as well, then reaching that 100, the first 100 applicants can go very quickly. The outline of your resume, building your resume, things that makes, and John, this is actually where you probably want to step into, but on your federal resume, things that sort of kind of makes it easier for HR is for you to list your citizenship, for you to list your veteran status, for you to list your clearance info, and your current grade. If because and the reason why I say that is because the federal government has so many different hiring tracks and special hiring authorities, because they may be looking for vets only. You do get vets preference. They may be looking for individuals that have a top secret clearance or just a secret clearance. And if you on my resume, I have like, my first name, and I will have that I'm a US citizen. A trend that we saw going through COVID was, as individuals were getting their vaccinations, they were like fully vaccinated and boosted. That was like right up there on top, because that became a requirement for a federal job. And so it immediately, gave HR, okay, I don't have to worry about asking this person, or this person is they're a US citizen, they are vaccinated, they do have a clearance, and hey, they're a vet. Boom. They can already go into a different bucket based off those things that are, within the first few seconds of looking at their resume. And it may not seem like a big deal, but it can really go a long way when you have that information on the onset of your resume.
Yeah, I agree, and we could have a whole class just about resumes for federal positions, but like there's not going to be like this is the federal resume template, just like there's not
Nope.
a this is the civilian resume template. There's just more requirements that you'll need that she's already mentioned, which also makes the resume longer. So one, you're trying to make sure you hit all the keywords so that you make the cert
Yep.
list so that the hiring manager gets the resume, right? So you want to score high enough and have enough keywords. And so like you probably are including more details on your federal resume than you will on your civilian resume. Plus,
Yep.
you need to like the hours, the points of contact, like
Yeah.
your clearance. So
Yeah.
all of this stuff also means the federal resume is going to be longer just because we're asking for all of that additional information. Um, and so like if you're a veteran, right? Because there's veteran preferences in the system as well. And some
Yep.
jobs are only open to certain people. So that's something else we may
Yeah.
talk about. But if you're a
Yep.
veteran, you can apply to most federal job openings, even if they're not open to the public.
Exactly. And we'll get into what does open to the public mean. What are, disability, what's the disability hiring process like? So if you're a Schedule A individual and you have, a medical disability that, the government hires, is a equal employer, and they believe in giving equal opportunities, to even those with disabilities, those that can still want to work. And I'll show you how to find those within the USA jobs, because it's another hiring track that's available and that's there. And like John mentioned, for veterans, there are some jobs that are just open. I'm not gonna say they're just open for veterans, but you get a veterans preference. So you may, I've been beat, like we say. I was like, oh no, I got beat out. You'll hear this. I got beat out by a vet. And they're like, well, what does that mean, Nikkia? It means that although I was deemed highly qualified, or one of the most qualified candidates, there was a veteran who came in and applied, and because they had their veterans preference, they ranked higher than me. Now, are they, the better candidate? That's up for HR to decide. But I do know that where their name falls on that cert list and where my name falls on that cert list comes down to their veterans preference. And for veterans that are out there, if you got, if you're coming out of the military and transferring into civilian life, there is a whole hiring path for you, and there are so many available opportunities for you within the federal government to still continue in your capacity of serving the country, if you so desire. If you are a military spouse, if your spouse and significant other is in the military, there's a hiring path for military spouses. And folks like, I didn't know that. And it's like, well, yeah, there is. And so there are so many flexibilities, and so many, I believe, I like to feel like hidden career paths and entries into barrier to get into the government that I didn't even realize, was out there 10 years ago, 12 years ago, or even, 3 years ago. So just, and we're talking about cyber. So there's also a lot of cybersecurity retention and recruitment efforts that are out there for you as well. So these are just some resume samples of what your federal resume may look like. And I know this page is a little, these are just, some samples that are out there that your experience, these are, what you don't see on here is you don't see Well, no, because the first one for Jane, you do see that she does not have a veteran's preference. For Jason, you see that, he lists what agency he worked at. This is the old one. You don't do your social security number anymore, and we all know why. But his citizenship, you can see that he's, United States citizen. And someone's like, well, why do why is that important? Why do they care? But it actually, for most federal jobs, you do have to be a U.S. citizen in order to work for the federal government. And so they ask you that. And I've been asked that question, well, do I have to be a U.S. citizen? And it's like, well, yeah, you do. And so the federal resumes, like John said, the government asks for a lot more information, and the resumes are longer. So don't feel bad if you do have that 3-page resume when you're submitting and after you've completed your resume for the federal government. All right, this is the crux and the fun part. This is, I guess, taking it up a notch for what we're going to get into between now and the end of this webinar. So search for jobs. Today we are talking about searching for cybersecurity jobs in the IT series. So what's there in red? 2210. 2210 is where you're going to find most and majority of all your cybersecurity positions that are out there and available within the federal government. Advanced searching is, the location that goes back to your locality pay, your grade, and your type. And I like to say, be specific in your search. What are you looking for? What's going to be ask yourself that. How far am I willing to drive to work? Again, we're post-pandemic. So are you looking for a remote job? Remote jobs are key and ideal. Are you looking for a telework job? And you will see that there are some agencies that are telework and remote friendly. There are some agencies that are not telework and remote friendly, but there are also some specific jobs that require you to come in every day because of the mission and because of the type of work that you're doing. You cannot, have that equipment outside of, the skiff. And so you need to just be comfortable and be very honest with yourself in regards to what type of job you're looking for. And that will help you.
Yeah, a skiff is a secure facility for those who don't know. So
Thanks, John.
if it's a job somewhere where you're working with classified material or classified environment, like classified cloud services, you're not going to be able to do that from your house. The other thing I just wanted to add in real quickly, and maybe you can expand on it. So the government has this series, right? A 2210 series for information technology.
Yes.
For all and any type of information technology job. So when you look at the 2210 series, that includes help desk, IT support, network engineering, vulnerability management, cloud security, cloud engineering, like threat intel, like every single thing you can think of in IT and cybersecurity, all within this one series. So that's why you're also going to want to narrow down some keyword search terms.
Exactly. And a lot of times people are like, well, how do I even find a cybersecurity job in the government? You start with looking for 2210s. Like that right there, because you can go in and type cybersecurity, you can go in and type, threat hunting and all that. If you type the series 2210, that series ties directly into your HR profile once you're hired at an agency. So if you're put into a 22 series, and as it's known across government, then you are in an IT cyber type of position. That's, that 2210. You say, oh, I'm a 2210. They're like, oh, then you're in tech. What part of tech? We don't know, but we know that you're in tech. In comparison to that, like contracting officers, they're known as 1101s. If you're in 1101, we know that you're in contracting. But 2210s is kind of where it's at. It's like where the magic happens. And it's where, we have seen a lot of vacancies that are posted. And I think I have a few more slides, and I'm going to go into USA Jobs, and I'll be able to answer the question of how many are available as of today, right now, which I'm curious to see. Understanding the vacancy, the basics, and the most important is the opening and closing date. Most of the time, they will say 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Don't be a procrastinator like me, like I was in my beginning stages of applying for a federal job where it's 8 o'clock at night and I look and I see and I'm like, oh, I want to go ahead and apply to this. And I go do everything that I need to do to apply, hit submit, and they take me to an additional questionnaire where those KSAs come in and I have to sit here and try to write 3 essays in about an hour's time to describe why I'm the best candidate and I have the knowledge and skills for that job. Don't be that person. Don't be me. I did that before and I learned very quickly. Look at the job vacancy. Make sure that if it closes at 11:59 p.m. that you meet that deadline. But also keep in mind you really do have until 11:59 because at 11:59, automatically in the system that job vacancy closes and it's like no longer accepting applications. And I've actually watched the countdown and have seen it. Pay scale and grade. The pay scale and the grade is going to pretty much, it's self-explanatory. It tells you what, what the range is. And this is like one of the myths because everyone says, well, it's really hard to negotiate your salary or your pay when you are going into the government. It's easier to do that in the commercial sector. And maybe 10 years ago, it was very challenging, but there are negotiation tactics that you can use when going to the federal government. There are other things that you can negotiate that may not be pay because they may say, this vacancy or this job starts at, a GS9 step 1. And you're like, okay, Nikkia, now you give me a whole nother terminology. What does that mean? Within the grade that you're in, if we talked about a 9, 11, 12, there are steps within those grades, and those steps are steps 1 through 10 in each GS grade. And we'll have to have a whole nother session on that, but you can work your way up from a GS1 all the way to a GS10, step 10, and it will show you what that looks like and what amount of money you could be making. But you can negotiate time. You can, if you're coming from the military and you're a veteran, you can negotiate, your hours and so forth like that. The appointment type, that's where we go into, are you are disability or a veterans or those are the different type of appointments. Is it an accepted service appointment? Is it a career conditional appointment? And what do these type of different appointments mean? Some of them come with probationary periods, and the probationary periods can be a year up to 2 years. You have to read the vacancy. You have to understanding the vacancy in which you're applied. I had an individual who applied for a job, got accepted to the job, took the job, only to find out that they were in a 3-year probationary period and didn't really realize that when they were hired. It was like, oh, well, you have to be on your best behavior for the next 3 years and hopefully even after that. But still, you have to, that's a long time when you think about being at, within that probationary period, you can be pretty much let go at any given time if you are, do something you're not supposed to do. Your work schedules can be, we call it AWSM time, which is an alternative work schedule where you may be able to work 4/10s or you may be able to work, I think 9/9/8, where you work 9-hour days and then you're off every other day that you get to pick. But is it a remote position? Is it a telework eligible position? If it is a telework or eligible position, but you're not eligible for telework until after your probationary period is over. If you have 2-year probationary period, that means you could potentially not be eligible to telework for 2 years. So it's just, you just have to understand you have to understand how to read the vacancy to understand what you're applying to. And those are very important.
Yeah. Could we maybe just share the pay scale and grade real quick? Maybe not a deep dive, but I think that's really complicated to people. Do you want me to pull that up or? Because I have something I could show.
So I have the DC. Can you still see my screen or no?
Yeah, I can still see the slides.
Okay. Oh, wait. You can see the slides. View tab.
So I think this confuses a lot of people. If we could just spend maybe a minute or two on this.
Yeah. Do you? Okay. Yep. That's what I had up. Okay. Is that your screen or is that mine?
That's your screen.
Oh, yeah. That's mine. So, yeah. So opm.gov, right? This is where you have the salary tables and the GS scale that we were talking about, which is general scale. Every year these salary tables are updated, and it's usually because there's some type of authorization that comes out from the administration that says federal employees will be getting a raise. So you hear in the news, again, we're talking about, like looking and hearing reports and stuff that come out. And, last year for 2023, all federal employees got a 4.1% increase. Well, 4.86 based off of your locality. And this is your locality in the DMV area. And to some, that may seem like a lot, but some it may not. So I'm just going to start with the GS9, right? GS9, step one, meaning if you're new to the government and you're coming in, or not even new to the government, if you're accepting a GS9 position, your starting salary is going to be $64,957. That's There could be 12 people that's coming in. This is what they're going to be offered. And it doesn't matter, quote unquote, if one is more highly qualified than the other. You're coming in, you're a GS9, step one, this is what you're going to get paid. But you can work your way all the way up to $84,441 out of step 10. Now, some folks are like, well, how long does it take to go from a GS1 to a GS step 10? And I forgot what the calculation was, but I know from a GS1, 2, and 3, every year you are advancing to the next step. So it's like year 1, year 2, year 3, you're advancing to the next step. And once and to step 4. So these right here, in 4 years, you can go from 64,000 to 71,000. In 4 years, you can go from 64K to 71K. That's in 4 years. Now, we're also talking about cybersecurity professionals, right? And in cybersecurity, pays big bucks, especially in the commercial sector. And this is one of the deterrents for individuals wanting to come and work for the federal government, because they say, if it's going to take me 4 years to, what is the math, to get a $7,000 increase, I can go to the private sector and get a $27,000 increase. I can start.
Well, I mean, I think this is actually a good point if we want to spend a couple minutes on this.
Okay.
Because I think I talk to a lot of people who are just trying to break in, students, veterans who are getting out of the military looking for their first civilian job, and mid-career changers, right? Career transitioners.
Yes.
And this is going to vary by agency, by the person, and these are generalities. Like, if you're motivated and you're a rock star, there's nothing to prevent you from aiming for a promotion a year after you get hired. Like,
yeah,
there's a lot of vacancies at some of these agencies. So if you go in there and you're like kicking ass and taking names and getting certifications and doing training, like, it doesn't have to be the world's slowest progression in the federal government anymore. Like, it's not the 1960s, right? These are cybersecurity jobs, and they want to retain the people who are doing awesome work. And it's really hard for them to retain people who are doing the awesome work because the pay can be difficult for the federal government to match. However, if there's cybersecurity jobs, oftentimes are entry level GS9. Entry level
yes.
GS9 making $65,000. And this is the DC, Maryland, Virginia locality table. So make sure you look at the locality table for you, right? But I mean, I also know what some folks get for their first job. And like, if you think I just graduated from UMUC or University of Maryland with my 3.5 GPA, and someone's going to give you a salary that starts at $100,000 with no security clearance, I have some news for you. So take a look at this pay scale and talk to your friends and networks and on Discords and chats and see what people are actually being offered for jobs that have a work-life balance. Because in the federal government, you're going to get a work-life balance as a GS9.
And so when we talk about what are benefits of working for the federal government, right? And Johnny, you hit on it slightly. Like, there are those intangibles where it may not be that highest paying salary, but you do get work-life balance. You do get stability, right? Once you get past your probation, Yeah, you get all the federal holidays. You get, I mean, and sometimes you get administrative leave depending on, your agency's administrator. They may, for I think for Memorial Day, you may, or for the day after Thanksgiving. It really just depends. But you get other intangibles that still equate to a well received employment package. And John also mentioned being promoted. If you're on a career ladder 9, 11, 12, you can go from a GS9 making 65 to making 94 in 3 years, because that's the track that you're on. And usually that's an automatic progression. That as long as you satisfy your performance at a level 3, which is satisfactory, you will advance to the next stage, the next grade. And I want to take my time to explain this to you. So, as you see the grades here, and you're advancing, when you're advancing to the next grade level, that's what's considered a promotion within the federal government. Going from one grade to a higher grade, that's when you're getting the promotion. And inside that grade are these steps. So, it's horizontal and vertical advancement within the government. Once you step into a 9, you can go a 9, make your way up to a step 3, and like, hey, I'm eligible, or I want to apply for a GS11. I've had enough required experience, which is usually 1 year, 52 weeks at the lower grade, and I'll show you that in the vacancy. I want to apply to a GS11. Okay, I applied to a GS11. I'm going up to $78,000 because I've been promoted. I've gotten a promotion. And we can get into what being promoted and getting a promotion and all the backhand
Right.
stuff, what that means. But
And
I just want you guys to understand this
yeah,
table.
and let me, as I think this may also, let's say you've been in the federal government for a couple of years and you're a GS9 step 4, right?
Yes.
So that would make, if you're in DC, Maryland, Virginia, I think that's like what, 73,
71.
right? If you get
Yeah,
promoted, most agencies are going to try to at least match the salary in the next grade, right? So you're not going to get
exactly.
promoted and get less money, right? You're not going to
No.
go from a GS step 5 to a GS 10 step 1, because you can kind of negotiate that as part of a promotion as well. So I just kind of wanted
Yeah.
to throw that in there so it's not confusing to people.
And as you guys are looking at this page, and I'm not gonna click on it, but John, if you did put this in the chat or a link for them to refer to, when you look at recruitment, relocation, and retention incentives, there are some agencies that will offer a equivalent to the private sector a bonus, or some agencies it's supplemental payments or supplemental retention based off, if you have a bachelor's, if you have a certification, so your SEC Plus, your Network Plus, your CISM, or your CISSP, you may also be eligible to get a certain percentage of your salary in retention pay to keep you on board with the agency. So you may be sitting here, with a GS9, but let's say you have your CISSP, which makes you eligible for a higher percentage of retention pay. That easily can be like another 10, 12, 15, 20, 25% of, your position. It's like, wait, what? On top of that, which is split up in your, biweekly paychecks. But still, you have that. And you have that job security. So you have to ask yourself, what's motivating you? Do I want job security and longevity? Am I playing, the long game, or am I a little bit riskier and I'm okay with, maybe being in the contracting world or the private sector? And it just, only you can answer that question.
Yeah, thanks for spending some time on this. I think that will be probably pretty helpful as we go back to getting back on track with where you were headed.
I know, where was I headed? Let's see.
I think we were going to start looking up jobs in USA Jobs.
Yes, we were. Let me go to this
And I put this
tab.
into the chat. We're mostly focused on 2210 series. The other thing
Yes.
I put in chat is, if you're in like threat intel and sort of some other nebulous things, sometimes you might want to look at a 0132 series, which is
Yes.
intel. They almost all will require security clearance, but there are some cyber type jobs that are in the intelligence series, but you might need to look a little harder. But we're focused mostly on the 2210 series.
Yep. So we're, gonna find out as of today, and we did say the 2210 series. So keywords where you can see job title, department, agency, series, or occupation. I've learned and I found it most successful to look for jobs based off series. And once I know the series that I'm in or that I'm looking to go to, that's what I find. So I'm just going to pop in 2210 here, right? Information technology management. So, how many jobs are there? 698 jobs as of today at June 3rd, 2023, 7:15 a.m. And those are just the ones that are listed. Those are just the jobs that are listed. So then you see this, and you're like, okay, what does this mean? And what is all this? So Kevin, let's go. Let me break this down to you what this means. Here are the hiring paths. This is what John and I were talking about. Is it open to the public, or is it only open to the agency employees? The hiring paths here will tell you how to filter your search criteria that you have. If it's open to the public, if you've never been in the federal government, or if you're not a current government employee, you can see there are 327 jobs that's open to everybody. That's any and everyone. If there are 211 that are open internal to an agency, doesn't, if you click this, it'll tell you only employees of this agency can apply to this job. All right, well, that makes sense. If you're a veteran and you're looking for a job, and this is probably the one that I'm going to click on, but you see how I said that there are hiring paths for military spouses, the National Guard and Reserve. If you are any one of these, you can easily say, okay, there's 698 jobs. I'm a military spouse, let me see all 260 jobs. All right, here we go. There's 260 jobs that are open to only military spouses. Where are these jobs at? And then this is where you can get into being very, very intentional about the type of job that you want, being intentional about your search results, and also being intentional about, sort of kind of what you're looking for. And I'm going to take my time and walk through this so that you guys can see. We had 698 when we started. I clicked military spouses. It dropped it down to 260 jobs. And then you can see the type of jobs that are out there: information technology specialists, systems analysts, software, application software, operating systems. So when these in parentheses, 12-month register, and John helped me, but the way I understand these are pretty much like detail assignments, and they have it they have this vacancy open for a year. So it's a continuous opening that is good for a year that you can go in and apply for that job.
Yeah, essentially it means that the posting is open for 12 months and they can hire during any time period, which is generally unusual for federal jobs, which is why it's noted there. Normally, federal jobs
Yeah.
are only open for like 10 or 14 days, and there's like a
Yeah,
limited window to apply because they get
definitely.
a lot of applications and they want to fill the job.
So when I see these type of jobs, like the 12-month register, to me, it's like a continuous onboarding staffing. Like these are positions like the IRS. The IRS always need people, and I'm not surprised to see that these jobs are for the IRS because they're always hiring people continuously all year round. But these give you some of the titles that you're looking for, and looking at the titles, you can see these are the type of titles that are in the government that you can see. You can do your salary. You can search it by salary, or you can search it by grade, depending on what you're looking to make, or if you know what your grade is. That also helps. And let's see, what other filters here do I like to use? Only show remote jobs. So if you're like, nope, I don't want any job where I have to come in, I only want a remote job, I'm a military spouse, I have to, still make sure the home life is okay, but I want to work and I want to do things. We went from 698 jobs to, I think, 258, down to 7 remote jobs for military spouses. And I say that because I just want you guys to see how we got where we are. I'll unclick some of these in a second, but you can see here, these little legends right here will tell you who it's open for, who can apply to this vacancy. So a surplus or displaced agency, a federal employee, is usually, I believe, when the division might have been stood down, or
There's a riff, basically.
yeah,
A
yeah,
reduction in force. So like sometimes maybe a budget got reduced or something, or like part of that mission got transferred to another agency. So there's a reduction in force. So the current federal employees have preference to try to get a different federal job. Essentially, is what we're talking
Correct.
about.
Right. And then that goes to show like the federal government is still trying to take care of its workforce. We understand you're in this position. The budget cut was not out of your control. You get sort of kind of like first right of refusal or first dibs, to in order to apply to other, to this particular job. This job right here is at the USPTO, which is a component under Department of Commerce. It's a remote job. It's also open to individuals with disabilities. If your doctor has given you a Schedule A and you have a disability that's noted, you can apply to this job. Competitive service jobs that military spouses are eligible to apply for. So when you hover over these vacancies and these announcements, it'll tell you who can apply for this. But as you did your search filters as well, so you sort of we searched specifically for what we were looking for.
Can
Um,
I want to just interject here for a minute. Like we've spent all of like 45 seconds looking for a job, and we have found a GS13 fully remote IT job of some sort, which starts at $84,000 a year. People, this is why I always encourage people to look at federal jobs. I want to know what they're hiring for. I don't know what
All right,
Empire
let's look
is.
at it. Let's click it. Let's
What is
click on
it?
it. Let's get into it. All right. So if you click underline, it'll tell you all the information about the PTO office. Intarc, let's see. This position, and this is where it's going to give you a summary of what this is. This is the Enterprise Architecture Division within the USPTO office. It tells you what they do, providing governance and oversight of IT investments and IT projects. So, as you're reading this, are you an IT project manager? Are you familiar with IT projects? Or are you familiar with enterprise architecture and how to build that? These are questions that you can start asking yourself to say, hey, am I eligible for this? And I'll say that. And I'll also say this: apply to the job and let them tell you you're not eligible. um who is it open to? Like, who is it open to means this is who can apply to this job. And how John and I was telling you, the GSA pay and scale and the salary, it's a GS13. The salary is anywhere from base 84,000 up to 145,000. Again, remember, it's one vacancy, meaning they're hiring from one person. They're hiring one person. Sometimes they can say we're filling multiple vacancies, or we're filling two vacancies anywhere in the US. So it's a remote job. Um, if it's a remote job, you don't have to worry about telework. If you need to travel for this job, it will let you know what traveling is required, what traveling is not required. This right here is so critical and so key. Clarification from the agency, because the agency, and I don't know why they do this, and this is where it gets confusing. And this is where reading is very fundamental. And this is where I like to print out the vacancy, because it will have all this information on here. And then clarification from the agency, it could potentially say only from federal employees of this agency can apply. And you're like, well, why didn't you just put that in? Don't know why. I don't know what happens in the background with HR, but I'm letting you know that clarification from the agency, this section right here is very important, because it should reiterate all of this right here and be somewhat redundant, but every now and then I'll see something down here that contradicts what it says up here. And you will go through the whole process of getting ready to apply, asking the questions, getting ready to submit, and like, boop, you're not an employee of USPTO. You're not eligible to apply for this. And you're like, what? I just spent 35 minutes of my life that I can't get back. And you guys, so just make sure you read the clarification from the agency on who can apply. All right, so the duties. What is this job? This may be an exciting new position for you if, again, we talked about you are familiar with enterprise architecture. You like the opportunity to communicate with stakeholders. So this lets me know that there may be some type of customer service engagement piece to this. IT standards. These are keywords: stakeholders, IT standards, enterprise architecture. I usually will have like a notebook with me that I just have, and I just start writing down, these key terms as I'm looking at the vacancy initially, like this: EA, IT standards, stakeholders, and using logic to create traditional and creative solutions for reoccurring problems. Lets me know I'm going to be doing some problem solving. I would put problem solver on there. I'd also put creativity. You know, they're looking for someone that's innovative. They're looking for someone that can think outside the box and solve problems that this division is needing. Kind of in a nutshell, that's what this job's going to be doing, which may be fast paced, it may be or it may not be fast paced, but reoccurring problems, meaning there's always something that's coming up, that there's always a fire you're going to have to put out, which for some can relate to it's going to be high stress, or some can take that as a challenge, like, oh, I love problem solving, it's going to keep me on my toes, it's going to keep me fresh. Yes, that's the type of job I'm looking for. I'm not going to just, you know, sit and get complacent and comfortable. So as you're looking at this, it you are reading in between the lines to sort of kind of see what they're trying to say. And I'll be honest with you, sometimes when these vacancies are written, they don't even really know what they're looking for. They're just compiling a whole bunch of different vacancies into one to make it fit for what they're looking for. USPTO, their headquarters is in Alexandria. I've been there, but this position is fully remote, meaning you can work anywhere. But remember when I said earlier the duty station, and I had mentioned duty station is the authorized telework location. So although this office is in Alexandria, Virginia, which ties to that DMV pay scale and locality, your home address is where your locality is going to be adjusted. John, I'm gonna take a second there and sort of kind of show what that means. So if you're in Alexandria, Virginia, we were like that GS9, I think was like $65,000, right?
Yep.
If we go to a different, let's say San Diego, because that's as close to Monterey as I'm gonna get, right? Let me go to share this tab instead. So I'm back to the salary table. I'm doing San Diego, California, and I'm doing the GS9, which actually isn't too much different. Okay, so if I lived in San Diego, I applied for this job that we just looked at USPTO. My salary isn't too much different. It's $64,722.
And this is a 13, so we could look at the 13 for comparison.
Oh, sorry, you're right. Here's a 13.
Yeah, this is a 13.
So this was a 13. So it's $111,000.
It's more.
For 13?
So if you lived in San Diego, it's potentially more than the DC, Virginia locality pay.
All right, so let's look at this. This table right now that we're looking at is San Diego's GS13 is 111. Let me go to DC. DC GS13. Okay, it's 112. So it's $1,000 difference between San Diego and DC for a GS13 in regards to the locality pay. But I want you guys to understand how that worked. This is a remote position. Your home office is located in Virginia, but your duty station, aka your locality pay, is going to be calculated off your remote home address. Let's see. I want to show a disparity. Where is there another one? Texas. Where are you, Texas?
Yeah, it'd be good to look at a different one.
Yeah. Let's look at Houston. So Houston, Houston is close too. I'm
Houston's good. There was like a Philadelphia, Pittsburgh one, which I think is a little less when I was looking at.
All right, let's go. I can look at that. Pittsburgh, Newcastle, PA. Let's see what that looks like. 101. Okay, so yeah, so the GS13, if you lived in what did we say this was? In Pittsburgh, and you were applying for this job, instead of your salary being 111,000, it'd be starting at 101. And that's what we mean by locality pay and duty station and salary calculation.
And this comes down, essentially, the federal government has tried to figure out cost of living. Like there are some other pay tables where it's going to be less. And that just comes down to cost of living based on what the federal government has assessed for cost of living.
Exactly. Yep. Share this tab instead. Okay, so I'm going back to the vacancy now so that we can see what that looks like. All right. Let's see. Conditions for employment. Again, only accepted if you're a U.S. citizen or national. Your resume and question responses must demonstrate that you have the competency for this job. Specialized experience. I want to highlight, bold, underline specialized experience because that is very, very important. What does specialized experience mean? When you come down here to qualifications, it will tell you exactly what that is. And for this particular job, specialized experience is experience that has equipped applicants with the knowledge, skills, and abilities to successfully perform the duties of this position, which for this position, working on an agile team, applying enterprise architecture principles, concept, and methods, and experience working on JavaScript and Node.js. So if you have that specialized experience, you can apply for this job. If your resume reflects that specialized experience, apply for this job. If you have that experience and it's not notated on your resume and you apply, you're pretty much probably going to be found not eligible for this job.
Yep.
You have to make sure that what it says a specialized experience for this position should be is on your resume, absolutely, without a doubt. JavaScript.
I was just going to say the other interesting thing I saw is that it doesn't require security clearance and it doesn't require drug testing, but it does require a background check.
Yep.
So again, these are little details that I'm seeing as we've scrolled through some things as well.
Yeah. If selected, you may be required to complete 1 year probationary period, right? So here we go. Your probationary period may be 1 year.
That's pretty standard still.
Yeah.
I think the 1 year probationary period is pretty standard. I've heard some agencies with a 2 year now, but you just kind of want to know.
And so some of them could be 2 years, and then some of the hiring paths come with their own type of probationary period. I know for the hiring path, like if you're a Schedule A holder, it's a 2 year probationary period. I'm not sure if there is like a defined probationary period for military spouses or veterans, but it really depends on, what the hiring path that you're coming in on as well. Let's see, your position must be IT related experience. And this is pretty standard. This is what you're going to commonly see this right here. All of this is common. Problem solving, oral communication, customer service, attention to detail is in majority of USA job vacancy announcements. And they want it to be related to IT specifically. And then, so what's your experience? This is where I like to tell individuals that it's not always your 9 to 5. It will tell you unpaid experience, including volunteer work with other other organizations, religious, spiritual, community, student, social. So I tell students, if you're looking at this, your internships, your apprenticeships, these are all type of experiences that you can put on your resume. On my resume, to be honest with you, I do have my volunteer experience within the WESIS community that I've done over these couple years, and what I've done in that role and in that capacity. All of that will help feed into why I'm a great candidate that's qualified for this position. Education may not be substituted. Sometimes you'll see this and it will say education can be substituted for experience at this level. So if you have a bachelor's or a master's, but usually it's when they're talking about those higher grades, the 14, 15s, and even some of the SES, which are senior executive series. I believe it's senior executive series. I don't think that's right. It could be. But you may need like your JD, which is a junior's doctorate degree. And you can use that degree in lieu of the experience. So let's just say I'm one of those people that went from high school to college to master's to my JD, and all I did was school. You may be able to come out and say, well, because I have my degree, I'm still eligible and qualified for this. And this is why I say applying and looking for a federal job is a job in itself, because you have to read through all this to know and to understand what the job is asking for. USPTO verifies and participates in E-Verify. E-Verify can be a very extensive process where, you go into another system, you're inputting the last 7 years of your life, who you came into contact with, where you traveled, did you go out of the country, did you like all these type of things that you don't think about, like, but they do come up. And as I'm scrolling, John, stop me if there's anything else
Yeah,
that
no relocation
go ahead.
expenses allowed, which makes sense because it's fully telework authorized, right? If it wasn't
Exactly.
like a telework job and you found the perfect job, it requires you to work in like Oregon and you're okay with moving there, like you would want to know if relocation expenses are authorized because if like you're making it to the interview and negotiating, an offer letter, you'll want to know that information if it got to that stage.
Yeah, because if they say, "Hey, we want to hire you, but we're not going to pay for you to move," and you're like, "Well, that plays into one of your negotiation, and two, like, do I really want take this job that may not help with me moving?"
Yeah.
And one thing that I like here is where they say what they define what a well qualified individual is a rating of 85 out of 100. So most vacancies you can get rated up to 100. You have to get a minimum of 85. Now, what they don't tell you when you get your notification of, if you're eligible or ineligible for the position, they won't tell you what your rating is. They won't say they used to, but I have not seen those in years what your actual rating is. And I know when I first started applying for jobs in the federal government, I was stuck at like that 87 to 93. It's like 86, 87, 91, 92. And I'm like, how can I get a 99, 100 or something? I mean, it took me a while, but it was because my resume just wasn't crafted the right way. And I don't know if you can ask them, well, what was my rating? Usually it just say you were considered to be among the well qualified candidates or the best qualified. But then that gets into, well, then what would be best qualified? And that's all determined by HR. Best qualified could be 90, right? So well qualified could be 85 to 90. I mean, it's a whole method to the madness, and the behind the scenes I don't know. But I like to look for these things to find out what they say. It will tell you the benefits that you have. You can click on, federal benefits. Actually, let's just click on it and see what federal benefits are. Federal benefits to working in the federal government, your health insurance, your dental and vision up to age 22. Health insurance is for your children up until the age of 26. You have your life insurance, long-term care insurance, your flex spending accounts, and then those other items that we talked about, work-life balance, federal holidays, maxi flex, flexibility. How you'll be evaluated. If you are a veteran and you are coming out of the military, or if you're currently still in your DD 2214, your VA letter, your SF-15, these are all paperwork and copies, electronic copies. Like, you should start your own internal personnel file where you can always go to. So as you're applying to jobs, even if you're, wherever your encrypted information is, that you keep it. I'm not going to get into where people keep their information, but if you're trying to apply to a job that you've seen that came over your phone and it's like, boop, I want to go ahead and put this in there. Make sure you have this paperwork easily accessible to you. This is another area where I have seen you get tricked up, where you will go through the process of applying, but it will then also say your ability to demonstrate your specialized experience as it relates to the self-assessment questions and the job announcements. Now, we've gotten to pretty much the bottom of this and we didn't see any self-assessment questions. And so folks are like, well, what do you mean the self-assessment questions? When you go all the way down and you look at how you're going to be evaluated, there usually may be an assessment questionnaire. This right here will give you more insights to what the job is asking. So I'm going to click on it so that we can see what that looks like. Because this will tell you just how time consuming applying to this job can get. You went through, we saw the vacancy, you read through the vacancy. That took us about, 10, 15 minutes to really break it apart. But then you go through this part, which is like part 2 to me, I feel, of applying, When you first go into USA Jobs, you say, I want to apply to this. You upload your resume, upload your supporting documentation. It will usually take you to this page next. Do you have veterans preference? Where, how many points, what percentage? Make sure you know that if you're a veteran. Read these questions very carefully, especially when they're capitalized. Are you a veteran who's separated from active duty under honorable conditions and you have a rating by the Department of Veteran Affairs showing that you're at least 30% disabled, or are retired from active military service with service-connected disability rating of 30% or more? I'm not a veteran, but I've worked with veterans and helping them get applied. So did you get an honorable discharge? And are you at least 30%? Do you have a 30% disability, either from the VA or active service? And when you start to think, like really read through these, it's like you have to ask yourself, am I this? Do I have this? Do I have documentation that I can prove this? Where's that documentation? Because if you don't have it, do I have to go to the VA and get it? Like these are all the fact gathering. This is all the process of hiring.
Please save a
For this job.
copy so you do not need to go to the VA when the perfect job pops up, because you ain't going to get the paperwork from the VA in that 10-day window the job is open. So if you're a veteran and you're watching this, please save your DD-214 and your SF-15 and know what your document is, and maybe save it in more than one place.
Yes, absolutely. And keep a hard copy just in the safe somewhere so that you have it, because you need that information. Because it will ask you, do you have it? You must also submit it. Do you have it? Yes. Are you a current or former federal employee displaced from the agency? Sometimes this word will be the agency hiring, which is Commerce, USPTO, or, it may say a agency. It all really depends. If yes, confirm you're located in the local commuting area. And this is where you have to read everything that it says, because if you answer one of these questions wrong or incorrectly, you can disqualify yourself just because you didn't read it the right way or you misinterpret it the right way. And I have been guilty of that several times where I just read through it really quickly. Oh, I've seen this. I know what they're asking me. Bam. And gotten all the way through the end, felt really good about the job. And, a week later, you were found ineligible because, and I'm like, I will email, well, why was I found ineligible? Well, you answered this question this way and that made, I'm like, Nikkia, you didn't read. So this is where reading it really, really becomes important. And it will ask you certain things that you need to have for the job. Here it's saying you must submit a copy of your most recent performance appraisal. So if you're in the federal government and as you start to your career in the federal government, or if you're in it, make sure you always keep a copy of your annual performance appraisals, the signed copies too, the final copy that you got for your end of year appraisals. Keep that somewhere. I've been in the federal government for 13 years. I have all 13. The signed copies, not the draft, not the ones the signed copy from my supervisor, because there's been times where they're like, well, this wasn't signed by the supervisor. Make sure you keep a copy of that. And if you do your performance appraisals with your supervisor, ask them to give you a copy of the final so that you have it. But most HR systems, you should be able to download it. If not, just this is good hygiene to start. If you've never been in the federal government, just create a folder that says, appraisals, what fiscal year it is, or however you want to do it, but make sure you keep them. Again, I could probably talk about and go through this all day. Are you a former federal employee who held a career appointment in the competitive service, or who held a career conditional appointment and is within 3 years of the date of separation, or is preference eligible? And like, John, this is where I'm telling you, and everyone on this call, looking for a federal job is a job in itself. You have to take your time putting on that patience cap, because this is one of those myth busters. Like, it's just it takes too long to apply for a job. It takes way too long. That's why I don't like applying for a job. I don't even want to be bothered with, all the steps that it takes. Yes, it does take a long time to apply for the job for the federal government. But once you get the hang of it, once you've done it, you begin to know what to look for, where you can quickly identify it, to where you can initially upgrade on the jump, answer these questions, but then you can go back and fill in, like, let me just go back and check that. Let me make sure I did this. Let me make sure I did that. It will tell you where to find on your SF50, and your SF50 pretty much is your personal action form, and it will just, this is who you are, this is who you work for, this is how much you make, this is what your classification is, etc., like that. You get them pretty much when any type of personal action is made on your behalf and for you. But it'll tell you where to look. So if you look in these blocks 24, 34 on your SF50, it'll let you know if you fit this criteria, yes or no. And click of the mouse. Like sometimes I've inadvertently clicked yes, thinking I clicked no, and get all the way through. And again, I've disqualified myself. So you just have to take your time and really be intentional and dedicated to applying for the jobs. Are you in the commuting area? We talked about that. Interchange agreements or similar authorities. If you want to know what that is, if you don't know if you are under an interchange agreement, you click here and it'll tell you if you are or not. Are you a spouse or a member of the armed forces? You can say yes or no, but there may be other requirements that come with that. Peace Corps volunteer. Like there are a lot of questions in this questionnaire that they're going to ask you. And I've known folks to say, I don't feel like finishing this questionnaire. Forget it. I don't want the job that bad. And we'll stop. And then their application will not be submitted. So you have to ask yourself, how bad do you really, really want this job? How many questions? There's 9. I'm just gonna, scroll
this
down.
This was the preview too, so I don't know if every single one of these questions would be for that job.
They usually are.
Okay.
They've gotten to where.
Yeah, I think we were also trying to see if there was a KSA survey question.
And so that's another thing. Okay, hold on. We'll get to, this is a preview, but for this job itself, I'm trying to see. Yes, there is an assessment. Here we go. There is an assessment. Hold on. Let me go back up. Because so a lot of this stuff, those are 24 questions.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. I was going to say a lot of this stuff up here, like at some point you'll be like, oh yes, I'm a former, or I'm not, or I'm a veteran. And like, you'll know the answers to some of these questions.
Right. And once you do it the first time, usually when you go back into it, even if you're applying for other positions and jobs within for the USPTO or whatever agency, sometimes it will save it in your profile. So you don't have to go through all 24 questions all over again. You just have to make sure that none of that information has changed. But as John was saying, are there KSAs? And this is what the assessment one is. So to tell you what the job is, you have to have 52 weeks at the lower grade. Right here will tell you, you need to certify that you have at least 1 year specialized experience to this grade. And then you'll get these questions. These are the tricky questions too. It's asking you populating enterprise architecture repository for each automated information system in development and production. If you know what that means, I don't know what that means, but if you know what that means, then you will be all like, I have no experience in performing this work behavior, but I'm willing to learn. You click this 9 times out of 10, they're going to say you're not eligible for this job. Because this is all going into the computer and the system, and this is where that automated calculations are being done. A human is not looking at these. A through E has a different ranking, and once you answer all these questions, a tally is done, all automated, to show if you're hot, where you rank and if you make the cert list. But you're also not allowed or should or even encouraged to lie on your federal application. So usually most applicants fall between D and E. They're either considered an expert, they advise and instruct others in carrying out this work behavior on a regular basis. They're consulted by their colleagues or supervisors to carry out this work in usually complex situations. If you think about when we first looked at the summary for this job, it was like reoccurring problems. How do you answer reoccurring problems? I'm not surprised to see unusually complex situations here, because it's, again, keywords. You're looking at the keywords. And the difference between D and E is I have performed this work behavior independently across a wide range of situations. I've assisted others in carrying out this work behavior. I seek guidance in carrying out this work behavior only in unusual, complex situations. So where this one's saying I'm considered an expert, this one says I perform this work independently. I carry out this work behavior, basically you're consulted by, or I have to go to. So these two, D&E can either distinguish between, I'm higher level, I'm pretty much a supervisor, maybe, or a team lead or a program lead, or I just have that much experience and knowledge where everybody comes to me. Or yes, I've done this work. It's been part of my regular duties. But there are times where I may need to like go to someone else to get guidance on which way to go. Again, you have to be very careful on how you answer these questions because you don't want to lie, but you also don't want to put yourself in a position where you're selling yourself short. Really, this goes back to talking to your mentor. You and I work together, or you are on my team, or talking to some of your other team members, talking to your supervisors to really see what your qualification is. And so there is 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. This is one of the longer ones. PTO does not play, but PTO is also one of the best places to work too. So this is a weeding out process. They are actually really high up on the best places to work within the federal government.
Yeah, one of the things here as we talk about not selling yourself short, we also don't want to falsify information on this. And these are a lot of questions. I've never seen this many actually. Um, there, I have seen some that require written responses, which is not this, but I've had those as well, which are fun. So, like,
Yeah.
you need to be confident in the abilities you do bring to the table. Though, like, there's some questions through here that weren't technical. Oral communication skills, I think, was one
Yeah.
of them. Right? Like, please don't sell yourself short on things that you need, like that are clearly a D or an E.
Exactly.
Especially for like if you've like created SharePoint websites and are pretty
Yeah.
familiar with
See.
that, don't sell yourself short. Don't pick C if like you are able to build SharePoint sites. Like that's at least a
Exactly.
D. Like that's at least a D. If you build SharePoint sites and you do knowledge management in some capacity, then like this comes back to a lot of people that attend the Diana Initiative are not white men like myself. And I think a lot of folks get imposter syndrome, especially when they come to fill these out.
Yeah.
Right. So, like, just like in the interview, we want you to be confident and project the skills and the value you bring. You want to think about that when you're filling these out. So you give yourself the best results to get selected so that a hiring manager looks at your resume.
Exactly. And you mentioned imposter syndrome. I don't know if you want to give like a quick 2-second what that means to some of the folks that don't. I
Yeah.
know I suffered for it early on, but what does that mean when you
Yeah.
have that?
I mean, I think in my own words, when we talk about imposter syndrome, you're comparing yourself to experts in the field, or you're undervaluing the skills you bring to the table, right? So if you're a person with 3 years of experience, then you should compare yourself to other people in the field with 3 years of experience, right? You
Yes.
shouldn't compare yourself to the person giving the DEF CON talk, maybe, right? And so like because people go to these events, they're like, oh my God, look at that person, or like that person's so smart. It was like, okay, but like who are you comparing yourself to, and what do you do on a day-to-day basis, and what value do you bring? And mentorships can help with this. Like, there's lots of organizations like WeSys and others, CyberJitsuCon, that have
Yep.
programs to also find you a mentor that can help with that to some degree, and like have you like understand and be confident in the skills you're bringing when it comes to making your resume, when it comes to applying for jobs, whether it's a civilian job or a federal job.
And when you that mentor piece that you hit on, it was like spot on the nail, because one I was telling you how mentors can help you like see within things that you may not be able to see. They may be able to help you pull this out. So if you took this to your mentor and like, hey, I'm stuck between a D and an E, I feel that I'm this, your mentor might say, no, you're an E. Like, how many people, they may give you an example, how many people come to you and ask you for that, and you don't even think like that. But another one of my mentors told me was, do not compare your day 1 to someone else's day 10. And we were talking about when I was saying, like, I don't necessarily feel adequate enough in this position, or, like I can do, they're like, no, you're the best person for this position. You're just trying to compare yourself to that SES or that UC. it's good to have that goal to get there, but you're comparing where you are now to where that person is and the experience that that person have, and you guys definitely are not on the same page in regards to years of experience. That person has been here 17 years, you've been here too. um and so yeah, like when you're going through this, and this is one of the longer ones, I didn't mean for us to go this deep because I don't want to scare any of you away. I want to encourage you to apply for jobs within the federal government. I promise you they're not this extensive. um but again, PTO is one of the best places, one of the top best places to work. So I can see probably why they're being so thorough in their applicant pool, because it goes back to their culture. They're doing the heavy lifting and the screening for the applicants that they get in, because normally once the applicants get in there and they get hired, they don't really leave. They stay for a very, very long time. And I'm specifically talking about USPTO. Secondly, um, John, there are only, I think, maybe two agencies that have you still write out an actual essay, like a written essay to demonstrate your skills. And usually that piece comes after this piece. So you can get through all of this, you can get through going through submitting, and it will say, okay, now you've advanced to the next level. You have been, the computer does like some calculation and it won't tell you it is, but it says you advance to the next level, and it's all before you submit it. And it will say we have maybe 2 or 3 questions that we need you to answer. And you don't know that until you answer all these questions and click submit and advance to the next stage. And that's the part that has thrown me for a loop sometimes, because I'll get through all of this. I feel really good. I've taken 2 hours. I've answered everything. Smooth jazz going in the background. I've like totally woosawed and like have thrown the computer, but I picked it back up and I've gone back to the screen and I finished all 24, 4,800 questions. And then I still got to go write 2 pages.
Well, the advice I have, whether it's a federal job or if you're asked to write something for a civilian job, because some civilian jobs ask for that too, is save a copy of that.
Yep.
Like you put that into a Word document or whatever you want to use, and save that in case you need to refer back to that, or you have another similar
Yes.
application in the future sometime that asks for a similar response. So
and you took the words out of my mouth, because if I'm applying for the same type of jobs, and I'm gonna tell you guys this now, Mythbuster, there are very few jobs that will have you go through that, few agencies that will have you go through to that next step. I've only seen about 2. I'm not gonna name them, but I've only seen about 2 that will have you go to that next step. But as John said, save that Word document, because you're pretty much gonna be applying mostly for the same type of job that you want, maybe a higher grade and so forth like that. So that's that template, that document. You can go in, tweak it, add a sentence here, add more work experience, and just have it on the back burner so that you're not recreating the wheel from jump.
Yeah, and I think as we start to wrap things up, is that when you go through and spend the time to create your initial profile and get your resume in the format that the federal government needs with all the additional information, like that is a one-time cost investment, right? That's like setting up your profile and setting up LinkedIn, which some of you people probably need to spend more time on. I've seen your LinkedIn profiles and your pictures, and your Indeed, or like whatever it is. Like there's an initial, like that one-time sunk cost. And then there's a lot of repeatable things once you set up some things, and you'll become more familiar with the process. So 2 things that I think I want the audience to take away, whether you're live with us or you're watching this later. There's a lot of open jobs in the federal government for IT and cybersecurity, right?
Yes.
And that number will vary because a lot of the federal jobs are only open for a very limited period of today. So today it was like just shy of
698. Yeah.
Like 700 openings today, right?
Right.
And that was just with like a real quick search. And then like within the 2210 series, right, that was for a security architect. There was like some cloud stuff, some application, right? These are any technology jobs. So you are going to want to narrow the searching down to things that you bring to the table. As far as the series go, right, the GS9, 11, 12, some of that will depend on how senior you are. right? Like if you're
Yeah.
just kind of trying to break in, then you probably want to look at a lot of the GS9. So maybe that's a way to filter.
Yeah.
And as Nikkia has alluded to, like there's some programs now at agencies where it's what's it called, a ladder promotion where you're hired as a 9, but unless you screw something up real bad, it's going to be a promotion to 11
Yep.
and then a promotion to 12. And that's like, that was,
Pretty
if you're
automatic.
in like Maryland, that was like a pretty good increase because GS12 step one, whether you intend to be a federal employee for 35 years or not, because again, it's your career. Like you could take that. Now I make $95,000, and now I want to go see what kind of interviews and offers I get on the civilian side. Like that's perfectly fine. Like you've
Yeah.
spent 3 years in the federal government at that point. Like there's not. It's not like you use that agency. Like you've invested time, and so there's more than one way to have a career, whether or not it involves the federal job for a long period of time or more than one period of time of your employment with a federal agency. So I didn't know if you
Agree.
wanted to try and wrap some things up or have some final pieces of advice.
Yeah. So, okay. Yes, I do want to wrap it up. And I'm going to start by saying this because I said in the beginning, patience, you're going to make sure you want to put on your patience cap. But I also want to stress that there are great benefits to working for the federal government. The federal government needs you, and the cybersecurity career path within the federal government. I mean, there are a couple others I didn't even hit on that can pay those higher salaries that you could. There are other, we're gonna have to have a part two of this, of what the what that looks like. But it can be very fruitful. And a lot of, there are times I may be tempted to be like, oh, maybe I should go look at private sector. But one of the reasons that I don't is because I like job security, right? And being in the federal government and have been in the federal government for 13 years, I enjoy the job security of knowing, I come, I do my work, I get paid, every 2 weeks. I'm not worried about if my contractor is about to lose a contract. Are they going to exercise the next option? Is it going to be extended? Is the funding cut off? And I also like the work balance and the flexibilities, especially now in this post-pandemic hybrid world. I can run to the post office and the grocery store real quick. I have my phone on me. And I mean, we can do that, I'm sure, outside of the government too. But knowing that I have that flexibility and that support from my leadership, they're like, hey, play hard. I mean, work hard, but play harder. We want you all to be happy. We support you. It goes back to that culture. So the biggest takeaway is, although you guys saw all the different intricate details of how to start or even apply for a job in the government, walk away from this conversation knowing that as you go that route, it's not going to be a surprise. You're not going to be like, oh, I'm going to go apply for a government job. And, oh my goodness, I'm surprised. You now have that information. You're now equipped with that information. So you know what to expect in doing so. Secondly, you have John and myself that are here. Like, reach out to us. If you're interested or you see a job, you want to apply to a job. And I did just volunteer you, John. But hey, send us an email, send us a DM, let us know, let us know if you guys need some help. We may not personally be able, well, we may not be able to personally help you, but we may know people who do. We may know people at those agencies that we can connect you with. Or we may be like, if it's a general quick question, be able to answer it for you. You have resources. And then, hey, Google is your best friend. Get online, look at OPM, look at OMB, see what type of webinars are out there, see, who's talking about, this type of stuff, the webinars for federal hiring, then you have federal resume, then you have federal interviewing. Like there's levels to this. But you can do it. Like, you can do it. Like, do it. Get out there. The government needs you. We need you, especially in the cybersecurity discipline. We need cybersecurity professionals, and to have a robust, educated, and aggressive cybersecurity workforce in the federal government, because we're the federal government. Like, that's it. That's the pin I got. I'm gonna stop right there.
Yeah. And a lot of people, I think at some point in their career, ask themselves, like, what's fulfilling about your career? And I think a lot of the people in federal government do care about the mission for the organization they work in, right? It's a mission driven culture right? It
Yeah.
doesn't matter whether we've talked about Department of Education or Department of Justice or, NASA, right? It is rocket science there, right? I mean, like, so you might not, be doing rocket science things, but like the mission of NASA is pretty awesome. Like, I was like, I could get behind that mission. So that's one
Right.
of the other things to consider as a career changer if you're trying to get into cybersecurity is like a lot of federal jobs, and I stay in DoD contracting because I'm trying to help the mission, right? Because there's a mission, like it's mission driven.
Mission
It's one reason
oriented.
why
Yeah.
I think a lot of veterans end up as federal employees to some extent, because they sort of were indoctrinated to be mission driven. But it is one thing to think about if you've never really thought about federal careers before and are kind of open to it, right? It's not just that you get the holidays off and career stability. Like there really is like an agency mission that everyone there is collectively trying to support, which is, why we talked about understanding what agency it is that you potentially be applying to, sort of regardless of what role you might have within that agency.
Agreed. Yes.
Yeah.
Mission
Oh,
orientation.
well, we
Definitely.
will talk about having a part two. We'll have to talk offline. I thought this was really helpful today, and
Good.
we'll have this on. It's recorded or be on YouTube. Thank you so much for spending
Thanks,
2 hours
everyone.
talking about this today. I think this is going to benefit a lot of people, and then maybe
Yay.
stay tuned
Okay.
for part two at some point.
All right. Thanks. Everyone have a great weekend. Whenever you're seeing this or a day, whatever, just go forth, and just lead where you stand.
All right, bye
Thanks.
everyone.